The first thing I remember is the cold biting through my coat, sharp enough to make my breath hitch. I stood on my father's porch with my daughter pressed to my chest, her body so small it felt unreal, like something fragile I was afraid to breathe on too hard. Ivy was 4 days old. I was still bleeding from surgery, and the door in front of me stayed shut. The entire content of the video is a fictional work created by the writing team of the Revenge Sins channel, intended to reflect common conflicts in families and society, helping viewers recognize their emotions and choose a more positive way of living. I knocked again, harder this time, because my hands were already shaking and I knew I wouldn't have many tries left. The door opened just enough for my father's face to appear. Victor Reed did not look surprised. He looked prepared. "You came back," he said. "No hello. No concern. Just that. I need a place to stay," I said. My voice sounded thinner than I expected. "Just for a night. I'm still recovering." "The baby." He glanced down at Ivy, not at her face, at the blanket, the way it barely covered her. His mouth tightened. "This is exactly what I warned you about," he said. From behind him, my sister's voice floated in, casual and bored. "Is that her?" Elena stepped into view, leaning against the wall like this was an inconvenience interrupting her evening. She smiled when she saw me. It was the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. "You look rough," she said. "I told you she wouldn't last." I swallowed. "I'm not here to fight. I just need somewhere warm. She's too little for this." My father opened the door wider, then stopped. He didn't step aside. He blocked the entry with his body. "There are conditions," he said. "What I asked?" Elena reached past him and held out a folder. Thick, neatly labeled. "Ready? Temporary guardianship," she said, "until you stabilize." I stared at the papers. "I'm her mother. And you're not in a position to make good decisions." She replied, "You're exhausted, emotional. Look at you. I don't want to give her up." I said, "Not even temporarily." My father's voice dropped, controlled and sharp. "You walked out of this house once. You don't get to walk back in and make demands." "I'm not making demands," I said. "I'm asking for help." Elena laughed softly. "This is help. Let adults handle this." I felt Ivy stir, her tiny body pressing closer to mine. Her cry was weak, too weak. "For one night," I said. "I'll sleep on the couch. I won't be in the way." My father's eyes hardened. "Sign the papers." I looked down at Ivy's face, pale against my chest. For a moment, just a moment, I thought about it. Warmth. Safety. One signature. My hands trembled as I pushed the folder back. "No." Everything changed then. My father grabbed my arm. "You're making this difficult. Let go of me." I said, "You always do this." Elena snapped. "You turn everything into drama." He shoved me backward. Not hard, just enough. My heel slipped on the ice. Pain tore through my abdomen, white and blinding. I gasped, clutching Ivy tighter. "Stop," I said. "Please." My father stepped forward and pulled the door open fully for a second. Then he looked at me on the ground, at the blood seeping through my coat, at my daughter shaking in my arms. "This is your choice," he said. "You can't come in like this." He slammed the door. The lock clicked. I curled around Ivy, trying to shield her from the wind, my teeth chattering so hard I couldn't speak. I whispered her name over and over, promising her warmth, promising her safety, even as the cold crept deeper into my bones. If you're listening to this and your chest feels tight right now, stay with me. Some stories don't begin with strength. They begin with survival. I pressed my forehead against Ivy's, breathing into her hair to keep myself steady. Her cry thinned, each sound weaker than the last, and panic crept up my spine in slow, deliberate steps. "Elena," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "She's cold. She's fine. My sister replied through the door, "Babies cry. You're overreacting. I just gave birth." I said, "I can barely stand. I need help." My father's voice cut in, flat and impatient. "You need structure. That's always been your problem." I shifted Ivy higher against my chest, my arm shaking with the effort. Blood soaked through the fabric near my ribs, warm at first, then cooling fast. "I can't sign those papers," I said. "You know what that means. It means stability," Elena said. "It means she won't grow up the way you did." "You mean without being controlled," I said. There was a pause. Then my father spoke again. "Watch your tone. I'm not handing my daughter over," I said, "not to prove something to you." Elena sighed, the sound exaggerated. "This isn't about you. This is about what's best for her. What's best is keeping her with her mother." I said, "You don't get to decide that. You already failed at deciding." My father snapped. "You left. You came back broken. Now you want us to clean it up." "I didn't leave her," I said. "I'm here." "You're here because you have nowhere else to go," Elena said. "That's not the same thing." I felt Ivy's body tense, then relax again, too quickly. Fear sharpened my thoughts, narrowing them down to one terrible idea: warmth, shelter, a signature. My fingers brushed the edge of the folder on the ground. For one heartbeat, I imagined writing my name, walking inside, letting them take over until I was strong again. My father's voice softened. "Just slightly. Sign it. Naomi. We'll talk later. Later. Always later." I looked down at Ivy's face. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I can't." The door opened a crack, just enough for Elena to step out. She crouched in front of me, her eyes level with mine. "You're choosing pride over your child," she said quietly. "Remember that." I shook my head. "I'm choosing her." Elena stood and stepped back inside. My father followed, his expression already closed off. "Then you made your decision," he said. The door shut again. The lock turned once more. I wrapped my coat tighter around Ivy, rocking her gently, my own breath coming in short, uneven pulls. I didn't scream. I didn't beg again. I stayed there, holding my daughter, knowing that if I signed, she would be warm, and if I didn't, I had to keep her alive myself. The silence after the lock turned was heavier than the cold. I shifted my weight, pulling Ivy closer, tucking her head under my chin the way the nurse had shown me. My hands were numb, but I kept rubbing her back, slow and steady, afraid to stop. "Stay with me," I whispered. "Mommy's here." Her cry came out thin, like it was getting lost before it reached the air. I pressed my cheek to her head, breathing warmth into her skin, counting each breath I managed to take. My body shook, not just from the cold, but from the effort of staying upright. From inside the house, I heard the faint clink of a glass. Elena's voice drifted through the door. "She's always been dramatic," my father replied, low and final. "She'll figure it out." I closed my eyes. I had been trained my entire life to hear those words and accept them. Figure it out. Handle it. Don't make it harder. I rocked Ivy and focused on the rhythm, because if I let my mind wander, it would go somewhere I couldn't afford to follow. My vision blurred. I fumbled with my wrist, my fingers brushing the medical alert band they'd given me at discharge. I hadn't pressed it before. I didn't want anyone else. I wanted my family. I pressed it anyway. "Stay awake," I told myself, but my legs folded beneath me. I slid down the porch railing, keeping Ivy pinned against my chest. My body curved around hers. The pain in my abdomen flared and then dulled, like something slipping away. Time lost its shape. Voices cut through the quiet, sharp and urgent. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" I tried to answer, but my tongue wouldn't move. "Baby first," Another voice said, "She's cold." Hands reached for Ivy. I tightened my grip instinctively. "She's mine," I murmured. "I know," the voice said, calmer now. "We've got her. You did the right thing." They wrapped Ivy in something warm. I felt the space where her body had been and panicked, reaching out until someone caught my arm. "You're safe," he said. "Stay with me." I tried to focus on his face, on the sound of his voice, but everything tilted. The last thing I felt was warmth spreading where the cold had been, and the weight of my body finally giving in. I woke to warmth that felt wrong at first, like my body didn't trust it. My throat burned when I tried to speak. "My baby," I croaked. "She's stable," a woman said immediately. She was standing close, already reaching for me. Mild hypothermia. We warmed her slowly. She responded well. I exhaled and didn't realize I had been holding my breath until then. "Can I see her?" "In a moment," she said. "You lost a lot of blood. We need you steady." The door opened quietly. A man stepped in, dressed in a dark coat that hadn't been taken off yet, like he hadn't planned to stay long. He stopped a few feet from the bed and waited until the nurse nodded before speaking. "You're awake," he said. His voice was even, careful. "Good. Who are you?" I said. "My name is Julian Frost," he replied. "I represent the estate of Charles Blackwood." I stared at him. "I don't know anyone by that name." He didn't look surprised. "You were told that." The nurse glanced between us, then stepped back, giving us space without leaving the room. "I don't have a grandfather," I said. "My mother didn't have family." Julian folded his hands. "She did. She chose distance, and your father enforced it." I swallowed. "Why are you here?" "Because you and your daughter were found in conditions that triggered a standing medical alert," he said. "And because Charles Blackwood instructed us to locate you if that ever happened." My heart started to pound. "Locate me for what?" "To make sure you were protected," he said. "And informed?" "Informed of what?" I said. "That you are the primary beneficiary of the Blackwood Family Trust," Julian said. "The trust holds assets valued between $260 million and $310 million. The words didn't land the way I expected. There was no rush, no relief, just a hollow pressure behind my ribs. "That doesn't make sense," I said. No one looked for me. Julian nodded once. "They did. Letters were sent after you turned 18. Requests for contact were filed. Your father returned them all. He submitted cease and desist notices on your behalf, claiming harassment." I closed my eyes. My father's voice echoed in my head, telling me I had no one else, that I was lucky he tolerated me. "When did he die?" I asked. 2 weeks ago, Julian said. "He wanted to meet you. He delayed travel until he had medical clearance. He didn't make it." The nurse cleared her throat gently. "Your daughter's ready." She wheeled Ivy over, wrapped tightly, her face pink again. I reached for her, my hands shaking, and held her against me. Julian watched quietly. "The inheritance does not give you freedom," he said. "It gives you truth, and leverage you never consented to losing." I looked down at Ivy, her breath warm against my skin, and felt something shift inside me, slow and painful, like a bone setting wrong after years out of place. They moved me to a quieter room later that morning. Ivy slept against my chest, her breathing steady, her weight anchoring me in a way nothing else could. Julian returned with a slim folder and a tablet, setting them on the small table beside the bed. "I need to be clear," he said. "This isn't a windfall. It's a structure." I looked at him. "I don't feel rich." "You shouldn't," he replied. "You feel exposed." He opened the folder and turned it toward me. "The Blackwood Family Trust is governed by a board. You are the primary beneficiary and hold majority voting control. There are restrictions, oversight. You won't be running anything tomorrow." I don't want to run anything, I said. Julian nodded. Your grandfather anticipated that. The words settled between us. I traced the edge of the page with my finger, lines of legal language that felt heavier than any number attached to them. He tried to reach me. I said, "Yes," and my father stopped it. "Yes." I tightened my hold on Ivy, a flash of anger cutting through the fog. He told me I had no one. Julian's voice stayed calm. That lie served him. A woman entered quietly, introduced herself as a social worker, and asked a series of questions in a measured tone. How I was feeling, whether I felt safe, whether I had somewhere to go after discharge. I answered honestly, "Not with my family." She nodded, made notes, and left without judgment. When the door closed, Julian spoke again. "There's something else." I waited. "Your father has contacted the court," he said. "He filed for emergency custody this morning." My chest tightened. "On what grounds?" "Instability," Julian said. "Abandonment. Endangerment." I laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "He locked us outside." "I know," Julian said. "We are gathering evidence. I'm not losing her," I said. "You're not," he replied. "But this won't be immediate. The court will question everyone." I looked down at Ivy's face, her lashes resting against her cheeks. "He's trying to erase me." Julian didn't deny it. "He's trying to regain control." I leaned back, exhaustion pressing in, but something else rose beneath it, quieter and harder. The trust, the board, the money spelled out in careful language. None of it felt like power. "Holding my daughter did. I won't give her to them," I said. "Not again." Julian met my gaze. "Then we proceed carefully and truthfully." I pressed my lips to Ivy's hair and breathed her in, steadying myself as the weight of what was coming settled into place. The first time I saw my father again, it was on a screen. Julian slid the tablet toward me, his expression unreadable. The petition was filed at 8:30 this morning. I read my name at the top. Then I read the words underneath it. Unstable. Unfit. Abandoned her infant. My hands started shaking before I reached the second page. "He said I disappeared." I said. "He said I left her behind." He said a lot of things. Julian replied, "That's how this works." A woman from Child Services joined us that afternoon. She spoke softly, like volume could soften meaning. "We have to follow procedure," she said. "There will be evaluations. Temporary supervision." "Supervision of who?" I asked. "Of you." She said, not unkindly, "Until we're confident the child is safe." I felt the room tilt. I almost died keeping her alive. She nodded. "I've read the report." "Then why is he being heard?" "Because he filed first," she said. "And because he presents as stable." Stable. I thought of the lock clicking into place. I thought of Ivy's cry thinning in the cold. "They're saying I'm dangerous," I said to Julian after she left. "They're saying whatever gives them leverage," he said. "This is escalation." 2 days later, my father walked into the conference room like he belonged there. He didn't look at me at first. He greeted the mediator with a polite nod, shook hands with the evaluator, and sat down. "Elena will be joining us by phone," he said. "She's been very concerned." Concerned. The word tasted wrong. The mediator cleared her throat. "Mr. Reed, can you explain why you believe emergency custody is necessary?" My father folded his hands. "My daughter has always struggled, emotionally. She's impulsive. She refuses help." I felt Julian shift beside me. "She came to my house in the middle of the night." My father continued, agitated, bleeding. "She put the baby at risk by leaving." "That's not what happened," I said. He looked at me then. really looked. His eyes cool. You don't remember things clearly when you're overwhelmed. I clenched my jaw. You locked us out. He shrugged slightly. She refused reasonable conditions. The evaluator turned to me. What conditions? Guardianship papers, I said. Temporary, to protect the child. My father added. No, I said. To control me. Elena's voice crackled through the speaker. She's always been dramatic. She exaggerates conflict. I almost froze. I said, You survived. My father replied calmly. Something inside me snapped, not loudly, but completely. Because I pressed a medical alert after you shut the door. The room went quiet. Julian leaned forward. We have evidence, he said. Audio from a neighbor's security system. My father's eyes flickered. Just once. That's unnecessary, he said. This is a family matter. It stopped being a family matter when you tried to erase her. Julian replied. The mediator raised a hand. We'll review everything. After the meeting, I sat alone with Ivy in my arms, rocking her slowly. Every word my father said replayed in my head, rearranging my past, painting me as the problem. They believe him, I whispered to Julian later. They believe the version that makes sense to them, he said. For now. I pressed my cheek to Ivy's hair, breathing through the fear curling in my chest. They weren't trying to take her because they loved her. They were trying to take her because I was still standing, and that terrified them. The hearing room was smaller than I expected, too small for the things being said inside it. I sat with Ivy sleeping against my chest, her weight steady, her breath warm through my sweater. Julian sat beside me, close enough that I could feel when he shifted. Across the table, my father sat upright, composed, hands folded as if this were a meeting he had scheduled himself. The judge glanced down at the file. Mr. Reed, you claim your daughter abandoned her child. Yes, my father said without hesitation. She left in a distressed state. We were concerned for the baby's safety. I tightened my arm around Ivy. Julian spoke calmly. The medical records indicate severe blood loss and hypothermia. Both mother and child were found outside the residence. The judge looked up. Outside by choice. My father nodded. She refused reasonable support. I said. He locked the door. My father turned to me slowly. You refused to cooperate. Cooperate. I repeated. You wanted guardianship. To ensure stability, he said. You were unwell. Julian stood. We'd like to submit audio evidence. The room stilled. The judge hesitated, then nodded. Julian pressed a button. My father's voice filled the space, flat and unmistakable. If she freezes, that's on her. There was a pause on the recording. Then, Elena's voice. She's always dramatic. The baby cries too much. The sound of a door closing followed. Then the lock. The judge's face changed. My father shifted in his seat. That recording lacks context. Julian didn't sit down. There is no context that excuses endangerment. The judge turned to my father. Did you believe your daughter and her newborn were safe outside that night? My father exhaled slowly, irritated now. I didn't think it would go that far. That far, I said quietly. He looked at me again, eyes steady. I didn't think you'd survive the night. The words landed without force. No anger, no apology, just truth. Something in my chest gave way. Not loudly, not visibly. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I felt Ivy breathe, felt the reality of her warmth against me, and understood that this sentence had been waiting my whole life to be spoken. The judge cleared his throat. Mr. Reed, do you understand what you've just said? I'm being honest, my father replied. She's always been fragile. Julian spoke, voice firm now. Your Honor, honesty does not absolve intent. The judge looked down at the file again, then back at me. Ms. Reed, do you have anything to add? I lifted my head. I didn't disappear. I said, I was pushed out. I didn't abandon my child. I stayed with her until help came. My father shook his head slightly. You're rewriting this. No, I said. You are. The judge leaned back, eyes sharp. This court finds the petitioner's claims inconsistent with the evidence presented. My father's posture stiffened. Emergency custody is denied. The judge continued. Visitation is suspended pending further review. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I held my daughter and let the silence settle, heavy and final, between the man who raised me and the truth he could no longer outrun. My father stood abruptly. This isn't over, Julian replied before I could. It is. The ruling came down in writing 2 days later. Julian read it aloud while I sat on the edge of the bed. Ivy balanced against my shoulder. Full physical and legal custody remains with the mother, he said. All visitation is suspended pending further investigation. I nodded. My body reacted before my mind did, shoulders loosening, breath slowing. It wasn't relief. It was release. A woman from Child Services returned that afternoon. She sat across from me. Her notebook closed this time. We'll continue monitoring for a while, she said. That's standard. I understand. I replied. She hesitated. You handled yourself well. I looked down at Ivy. I didn't have a choice. She stood, then paused at the door. If you need support, there are resources available. After she left, the room felt larger, quieter. Julian stayed, reviewing paperwork, making calls, building walls I hadn't known how to ask for. They won't stop trying to control the narrative, he said, but they've lost leverage. My father won't accept that. I said, no. Julian agreed. He'll tell himself another story. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. A voicemail. I didn't listen to it. I handed the phone to Julian instead. He played it once, then silenced it. You don't need to hear that. He said, I know. I replied. That night, when the nurse dimmed the lights, I lay awake with Ivy asleep on my chest. My body ached in places I hadn't known could hurt. My mind replayed the courtroom, my father's voice, the sentence that had cracked something open in me. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired in a way sleep wouldn't fix, but there was something else, too. A quiet steadiness, a sense that the ground beneath me had finally stopped shifting. Julian stopped by the next morning. We'll take this one step at a time, he said. You don't have to prove anything anymore. I watched Ivy stretch, her fingers curling around the fabric of my shirt. I'm done proving, I said. Julian nodded once. Good. I held my daughter close and let the quiet settle in, not as an absence, but as space I had finally earned. 8 months later, the snow returned quietly. I was holding Ivy when Julian called. There's an application I need you to see, he said. It came through one of the outreach funds connected to the trust. He slid the file across the table when we met. The names were different. The handwriting wasn't. They're asking for emergency assistance. He continued. Housing support. Short-term aid. I read the page once, then closed it. Ivy shifted in my arms, warm and heavy, her breath steady against my collarbone. They're not asking me, I said. No, Julian replied. They don't know it's you. I took a breath. Deny it. Julian nodded. And the referrals? Yes, I said. Send them resources we don't control. He didn't argue. He never did when my voice sounded like this. Later that day, I walked with Ivy tucked against my chest, her mittened hand gripping my coat. Snow dusted her hat. She watched it fall with quiet interest, unafraid. A woman passing us smiled. She's beautiful. Thank you, I said. She hesitated, then added, You're doing a good job. I didn't correct her. I just nodded and kept walking. That night, after Ivy fell asleep, I sat by the window and thought about the way stories travel, how people hear them, how they recognize pieces of themselves in places they didn't expect. If you've stayed with this one, if something here feels familiar, you're not alone. Sometimes listening is the first step toward choosing differently. Julian texted once more before midnight. All paperwork is finalized. No further action required. I set the phone down and rested my hand on Ivy's back, feeling the rise and fall. The simple proof of now. The storm hadn't taken my family. It took their hold on me. I held my daughter and let the quiet stay.